Good day, everyone. My name is Miss Ifeanyi Joseph, and in today's science class, we're going to be looking at a topic titled Materials, Types, and Uses. So, in today's class, I'm going to be looking at what materials is, what are the various types of materials we have around us, and what are these materials used for. So, it promises to be an exciting class, so please stay tuned and listen and learn something new. So, first of all, we're going to be starting with what are materials? Now, materials are substances used to make objects and things around us. Materials are substances used to make objects and things around us. So, when you look around you see different things. You see your chairs, your tables, doors, windows. Now, those various objects and things you see around you, they are made of different types of materials. They are made of different kinds of materials. So that's what materials is. They are substances used to make the various objects and things you see around you. Your food flasks you take to school, your water bottles, your school bags, all those items are made up from different kinds of materials. So that's what we are looking at in today's class. Now, these different kinds of materials all have different properties, and these different properties help them to be useful for various purposes. They have different properties and they help them to be useful in various purposes. Now, what are the types of materials we have? We have two types of materials. The first type of material we have is what? Natural materials. The first type of material is natural materials, and the second one is man-made or synthetic materials. You can either call them man-made or you call them synthetic materials. So those are the two types of materials we have. Now, what are natural materials? As the name implies, natural, they are materials that are what found in nature, and they are used as they are or slightly processed. Natural materials are materials that are found in nature. That means they are not produced by humans, they are found in nature, and they can be used as they are to make various objects, or they will undergo a little bit of processing to be able to produce various objects. Now, what are the examples of these natural materials? We have wood, cotton, stone, leather, clay. We have metals, some metals such as gold, silver, and the likes. All these are what we call natural materials because they occur in nature and are not produced by man. Now, the second type of material, which is the synthetic materials we mentioned earlier, they are materials that are created by humans using chemical purposes. As the name implies, man-made. They are created by humans using various chemical processes. Examples of these synthetic materials include your plastics, your glass, your concrete, and your nylons. So all this falls under what we call synthetic materials. Now, what are the properties of these various materials that we have? What are the properties of these various materials? Now, like I said earlier at the beginning of the class, that materials have different properties, which made them to be useful for different purposes. Now, the first property of material is what we call hardness. Now, some materials are hard, such as your metals and glass. Now, some materials are very hard, like your metals. If you have come across a metallic object before, you will notice how hard they are. Even your glass, they are what? Hard. While some materials are soft, like your cotton, your rubber, your wools, and the likes. They are what? Soft. They are soft. So that is also an example of a property of a material. Number two properties of material we have is what we call transparency. Now, what do we mean by transparency? Now, some materials allow light to pass through. Some materials allow light to pass through. Example, we have the glass. Your glass now, if you position a glass cup, you can be able to see what's on the other side of the glass cup. That's because they allow light to pass through, while others do not allow light to pass through, like your woods, your metals. Light cannot pass through them. So that's another major properties of metals. Transparency of materials. There are some that allow light to pass through, and there are other materials that do not allow light to pass through. The third type of property we're going to be looking at what we call flexibility. Now, some materials bend easily, like when you're using them in the production of items, they make production simple because they bend easily, such as your rubbers, your plastics, while others do not bend easily. They require extra effort before you can get them to bend. Examples are your woods, your metals, and the likes. The fourth type property of materials we're looking at is what we call waterproof. Waterproof. Now, what do we mean by waterproof? Now, some materials absorb water easily. Example, cotton, paper, they absorb water easily, while other materials repel water, e.g., plastics and rubber. So examples of these materials that repel water, we have your plastics and rubbers. They do not allow water to pass through them at all. They do not absorb water. Just like when we have the case of transparency of materials that allow light to pass through and the ones that do not allow light to pass through. So all these are the various properties of materials. We have the hardness, transparency, flexibility, and waterproof. So next, we're going to be looking at uses of materials. The next thing we're going to be looking at is uses of materials. Now, we said in our definition that materials are used to make various objects around us. Now, what are those various objects that we can get from materials? Now, materials are used in buildings and furnitures. Materials are used in buildings and furniture. Your houses, your school, churches, mosques, they are those buildings exist as a result of various materials that comes together. Your wood, your concrete, many more like that. They come together and they are used to erect buildings and make furniture such as your chairs, tables, stools, beds, and lots more. Number two, materials can be used in production of clothes and furniture. Cotton material is used in the production of clothes. Your shirts, trousers, skirts, tops, sweaters, they are made from materials such as cottons and wools. Three, materials are also used in the production of tools and machines. Your vehicles, your washing machine at home, your electric irons, all those various things we make use of in our day-to-day life, they are all gotten from what? Machines. They are all gotten from materials. So materials are what are used in making these machines and tools, your metals, your woods, and a lot of them. Number four, uses of materials is they are used in the production of containers and packaging. When we talk about containers and packaging, we're talking about our plates, our spoons, our food flasks, our water bottles. All these are gotten from materials. So we can say materials are all around us with so many purposes that are so much essential in our day-to-day life. So that's all in our class today. So for a little recap, we talked about materials, what materials are, how they are substances used to produce objects around us. We also looked at types of materials. So we have the natural and the synthetic materials. We also talked about what natural materials, those materials found in nature, and man-made materials, materials produced by man. We talked about the properties, the hardness, those that allow light to pass through, those that allow water to pass through. And we also looked at the various uses. So I hoped you enjoyed today's class and you learned something new. And I hope from today's class you get to appreciate the various things around you that are gotten from the various types of materials we have. So with that, we come to an end of today's class. Looking forward to seeing your comments about this topic, and then we'll see in our next class. Bye.